question is like till now we knew how from where we should prepare and all the stuff, and now we don't know how many rounds are there in a big tech company, like interview rounds, or from which round which type of question can be asked.
Okay, so again here it's not very different from one company to another. So I'll just give a general answer.
Hmm.
Another thing is like, given that I currently work at Meta, Facebook, I can't really divulge things which are not like public, right? So I'll try to give a general answer, and then I'll give just the maybe different thing about Meta. Almost the standard template is you'll have 5 rounds of interview. One is the
Okay.
phone interview, and then 4 rounds of on-site.
Okay.
Right. On screen, you won't get the next 4 rounds. So the phone screen is just the technical screen, right? So this is a round where they won't call you on site. It will happen via Zoom, and you get assigned an interview from the company, and they'll ask you. And generally, it's a 45-minute slot.
Okay.
But the 45-minute you should consider really 35 minutes, because what will happen is like the first 5 minutes are introduction, and the last 5 minutes are also like ask questions to the interview. So the actual meat of it's just the 35 minutes, right? So this 35 minutes, they will ask you a question. There will be some UI, like some people do it over Google Doc, some people do it over these websites called CoderPad, right? You can like try it out, CoderPad, just for like getting used to that UI. But basically they'll ask you a question, like they'll just copy paste it or something, and then you will be required to solve the question in the next 35 minutes. One of the main things in an interview to know, which is very different from when you're preparing, is when you're preparing, the only person you're talking to is there is no person, it's just an ID, right? So you don't have to communicate your thought, right? You're just doing, and there's no one to ask you don't have to explain anyone. However, in an interview, if you just start like typing and not explaining, it's very bad. You can't do that. Of course, like if you communicate but you don't know what you're doing, then also it's bad. But if you just keep doing, and even if you did things perfectly, but if you are bad at communicating, right? And by bad, I don't mean that your English is bad or something. Like, yeah, don't think of that. Like, I talk in Hindi at home all the day. So, yeah, by communication, I just mean that if you write like 1 or 2 lines, or even before, like sometimes if you see a question, right? Like, let's say someone asks you like how to do a pre-order traversal of this binary tree, right? Like, let's say someone asks it. So then, like, first thing you will go and ask them like some clarifying questions, or is it a binary tree? Is it a binary search tree? Right? Is it empty? Is it not empty? Something like that, just to like show them that you're not making any unnecessary wrong assumptions, right? This gives the interviewer confidence in you too, that you're just like not jumping knee jerk. And then you'll just discuss with them, right? You'll say that like, look, here's the algorithm in my mind, and here's an example. So draw out an example. Of course, it's much harder when you are on a virtual, because like it's easier to draw on an actual whiteboard. But these days, all the softwares have a drawing UI or something. So therefore, like at least big companies, a lot of them will tell you the software they'll use beforehand, and they'll give you the opportunity to try it out beforehand. So like I think there's like Google Draw or something which a lot of them use. So try it out by drawing, right? Before the interview itself, so that like you're not struggling in using the software, or the software is not hanging. So yeah, like, so say you draw a tree to the interviewer saying like, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, right? And another thing is like, don't necessarily draw examples, or even if you're drawing example which is like very basic, tell them that this is just a basic. I'm not assuming that this is sorted or anything, right? It's just that I'm trying but later as I go through it, I'll go to a harder example, right? But just to get to it, draw a simple one and explain them that, look, okay, I'll start with the root, then I'll go to the left, then I'll go to the right, whatever solution is. And then once I hit the null, so here you say that like I'm using a recursive solution, and then this is my base case, this is the terminating case. You have explained this all before even starting the coding. Okay. Now everyone differs here, but this is how I do, and it's been pretty good. A lot of interviews like this template. Once you have come to a point where you and your interviewer have agreed, like they might ask you some questions, and then you ask like, is it fine? Can I start coding? And they're like, yeah, go code. Right. At that point, you know that like the algorithm is at least clear between you and them, and now you're just coding and trying to do it. And even when you're coding, don't just like like every few lines, right? Like if I write like if root is null, return null, right? If I write this, I will just explain them like, hey, this is just the edge case I'm trying for, where if it's null, then I'm not, or if like root dot left is null or whatever, like it's a leaf child, right? You explain them, these are the cases, so you don't have to like constantly keep talking, but err on the side of talking more than talking less, right? Like if in doubt, talk and try to explain basically every logic, right? Like if there is like if you suddenly wrote like 30 lines and then like I have as the interviewer have to figure out what you're writing, it just puts a bad impression in my mind, right? Because one of the things interviews are testing for is like how good you are as a colleague, right? I hire you today, right? Like how good you, and tomorrow if you just like publish like 1,000 lines of code without being able to explain what you're doing, right? Like you're a terrible colleague. That's the answer. On the other hand, like if you write like in production, right? If you write a lot of comments, then you're a great colleague, right? So you should be able to explain what you're doing. So this is one of the things. So in those 35 minutes, you have to be able to explain what you're doing. You have to communicate and like be able to even run the code sometimes, or even pass test cases. Depends who they are. And yeah, this is just on the tech screen. If you clear the tech screen, then you'll have 4 rounds. If you're more of a junior engineer, then all 4 of these rounds will be tech. Like all 4 will be like just more like lead code style interviews.
Okay.
The more senior you get, at least 1 lead code round will be getting replaced by a system design round. Some places might do 2 system design rounds, the more senior you are. And some places also do a behavioral round, the more senior you go. And actually, this is one thing I'll say. Even for behavioral, prepare it before. A lot of people, including me, when I was very young, like I thought like, come on, who will prepare for behavioral, right? Like, कुछ भी पूछेंगे जवाब दे दूंगा, फंडे ही तो मारने हैं, right? That was my chance. And then one day a friend just asked me, right, like, oh, tell me about yourself. And hello, I'm Siddharth, I like football. And he's like, what are you saying? Right? And then I realized that even a question as simple as tell me about yourself, right? If someone just asks you without you preparing, you'll give a very stupid answer. Because no one cares in that room that I like football, right? It's irrelevant. The question they're asking when they ask me, tell me about yourself, is why should I hire you, right? That's the hidden question. So you have to tell that like, hey, I'm Siddharth, I've worked at Microsoft for 6 years, Facebook at 2 years, I've coded in C#, C++, whatever, right? You are behind the scenes giving them an answer of like your work experience and everything. Prepare this in front of a mirror and prepare it in a point where you don't have to completely cram it and like repeat like a robot, but at least have a script so that like you can more or less not be completely like stammering, oh shit, I didn't prepare this, oh hi, my name is Siddharth, oh I worked here, this is my college, like don't make it awkward. So, and behavioral rounds are almost never, you don't get selected to a company because you did behavioral well, but you did very bad in the technical interviews. What can happen though is you did very good in the technical rounds, but you did very bad in the behavioral round and you got rejected, right? So behavioral is more like a red flag interview, what they call that. Just by doing well in the behavioral you can't get accepted, but you can still get rejected in this round. So therefore take it seriously. And frankly, it matters much more when you have experience. When you are a junior, it doesn't matter that much, right? When you are in your early years, the only thing which matters is try to get your lead code thing as much as possible. And most companies will ask 5 rounds, 1 phone interview, 4 technical interview. I'll tell you here what's difference in Facebook versus the other ones. One, I really appreciate that Facebook will never ask you to compile it. Okay. We as interviewers do not have the ability to even run it. They disable the run button. Okay. So that's a good thing. On the other hand though, you will be asked to answer 2 questions in 45 minutes as opposed to 1. So that of course makes it hard. However, that said, I would say like at least in the 2 questions, 1 question is like easier. Like I can't say it's lead code easy or something, but it's easier. Like it's not really hard. So generally what happens is like it's either 2 easies or 1 easy, 1 medium, or if you're doing very well, someone will ask you like maybe a harder medium kind of thing. But here the emphasis is not necessarily on getting you to pass the test cases or anything, but just to make sure that you understand what you're doing, you can communicate quickly, and you are able to type code quickly and mostly correctly. If you make some syntax errors, no one will ever figure out, right? Because you can't run it. So if you missed like a comma here, there, it's fine. No one cares.
Okay.
This is Facebook. In other companies, every company does it. Amazon also, I know, they also don't allow you to compile. However, Microsoft and Google and many others, Snapchat, Twitter, they do ask you to compile it. So,
Okay.
and again, a lot of it changed after COVID. Before COVID, it all used to be whiteboard, right? Like you can't compile. But now, after the virtual interviews, many companies ask you to compile even past test cases. But thankfully, Facebook doesn't. But it does ask you to do 2 questions, and yeah, sometimes they ask you two system design rounds as opposed to one system design round, especially if you have few years of work experience. Like I was asked two rounds of system design.
Okay. So, sir, now we know the interview sequence. And, sir, what about the salary?
Yeah, so I would not divulge, like I don't want to disclose my salary. I'll just talk in ranges, right? Like the salary range of like what can be, and I'll talk both of India and US.
Yeah.
Right. So India, like let's say if you go to like some place like Google or something, and you are just like fresh out of college, actually your salary won't be that high. Like you might be very disappointed to see that like your gross salary, which is like basically what you get, right? Your pre-tax salary is like 10 to 15 lakhs as a new hire. Again, that's very high, right? Like it's not like really low. But that said, like some people think that you'll get 50 lakh out of college in India. That's not true. The only way to get a really high salary out of college is finance. Okay, it's like there's like 2-3 companies, Goldman Sachs, Tower Research, or some other algorithmic trading companies. They are the only ones who will pay you a ridiculous salary out of college. Even all these like consulting companies like McKinsey and all, the salary there is actually not high when you join. Like it's only 10 lakh, 12 lakh. However, as you grow, in India especially, the growth is very, very high. You might join as 12 lakh. In 5 years, you might be making 60 lakhs.
Yeah.
Right. Something like the trajectory is very, very high. Now I'll talk of US. In US, it's actually the opposite.
Okay.
In US, your starting salary is very high. Like, so basically, if you join like Google, Facebook, whatever, you will get, let's say, like a base salary of 100,000 US dollars, which like you can convert, right? Like you can think like 70, 80 lakhs, whatever. But on top of that, you will also get a huge stock joining bonus, right? Which is like, it vests over 4 years. So in newspaper, you will see like, oh, this person's getting 3 crores. That's not true. However, it's what they do is like, let's say you'll get like $150,000 over 4 years. So basically what will happen is like, you will get 1/4 of that 150,000 every year, right? So the longer you stay, the money will accumulate. However, what like Times of India will do is like, it will just add all the 150,000 and say like, this is how much they're getting. That's not true. However, as you continue in your job, right, every year you'll get bonus, and in companies like Google or Facebook at least, you will get more refresher stocks every year as well, and these stocks also end up being a lot. So like let's say I'll use Google as an example. Google and Facebook are very similar. I'm just using Google so that it doesn't seem like I'm giving any confidential information. In Google, let's say like you're a junior engineer, right? Like you just joined in US. Every year, and you just did like, just met all the expectations, right? You didn't do great or anything. They will give you $50,000 of stock every year on top of your joining stock. Okay. And again, this will vest over 4 years. So you can imagine that if you stayed there for 4 years, and even if you didn't get any promotion, you just like kept like doing just fine, then you get like $50,000 every year. 50,000, 4 years, 200,000. Plus like if you got plus 150,000 when you had got at the time of joining, so it's 350,000 plus you get the salary, right? The main one thing I want to point is, in US, salary hike is much less than in India, the base salary, right? So in India, you can go from like 12 lakh to 50 lakh in 5 years in your base salary. In US, that's almost never the case. Your base salary will increase to like 3 to 5% a year at max. It doesn't increase more than that. Very, very, very low. So even for someone like me who has like 10 years of work experience, when I started, my salary was like 100,000, right? When I started like 10 years back in US dollar. Even now I can tell my base salary is less than $200,000. I can tell you that. After 10 years. Okay, so it's not even doubled, right? That said, in US, the main source of income is your stocks. in big tech, right? So I have much more stocks. And again, in Microsoft, like I will compare Microsoft with Google or Facebook. In Microsoft, the stock they give you is much less than what they give you in Google or Facebook. Okay, the joining offer might be the exact same. So actually, Microsoft gives a good joining offer too. But then every year when you get a bonus or something, the bonus at Facebook or Google is way more than what you get at Microsoft, right? So, but again, your base salary does not increase that much. And one of the upsides of it is that in a good market your stock can go much higher. The downside is that, so the stocks I got from Facebook or something, I got at a much higher price, and now they're less than half of what. Like if they gave me like 200,000, now I don't even have 100,000 of it. Right? It's just a part of it. It's a risky proposition either way. It can be either very good or it can be very bad. I know. I think in India also they're moving to more of that. However, in India, the base salary increase is also very high, and of course it makes sense, right? If you start from a lower point, it's much easier to go double than if you're already at like 100,000. If you go double, you're already at 200,000. That's a lot of money, right? So therefore, it's easier when you percent-wise. But even otherwise, salaries grow faster in India than in US. But if you get promotions in US quick, especially in big companies, you will get a lot of stocks. And in a good market, the stocks can make you a millionaire pretty quick. In a bad market, these stocks can make that like all the work you did is just like worth nothing. So these are just some sample numbers. And I'll say like, a lot of my friends who graduated same time as I did, I think a lot of them are like earning like 50-60 lakhs in India per annum or more. I would say that's not everyone will get that, of course, but way more people are getting a good salary these days as opposed to when I graduated in 2012-13. Like then, even if you're working for like 10 years, I think your salary was like 20 lakh. But now the Indian economy has boomed so much. Even I know people who are not in engineering, right, who are in law, even they're earning 40-50 lakhs. So if you're not in engineering, even then don't worry, like Indian economy is doing pretty well. So you have a lot of like good opportunities ahead of you, at least in terms of salary. Especially if you do MBA or something, it actually increases a lot.
Okay, nice, sir. So do you have any advice, sir? Do you want to give any advice to our viewers who wants to join big tech companies? Like we can say conclusion of this video.
Okay. One thing I want to say, of course, one advice I would say is like, never think if things aren't going in your favor that this is it, that you can't do ahead. That if you're not getting replies or something, that all is lost. Try to talk to more people similar to me who worked for like 5-10 years, and you'll see the longer the time horizon, the more these things don't matter as much of what happened when you're 20 or 22. Of course, as I said, right now it will be very hard for you to digest that. But if people are not responding to you because you didn't get into an IIT, if you are doing in Infosys and things are not working well, don't think that like you'll never get ahead, because so many people have done it. The next thing I want to say is like, there is this perception, often misconception, I don't know if it's promoted in the internet a lot, that like people who end up in like Facebook or Google, they're like rock stars, they're geniuses, they have IQ of like 150. And this is like as farther from the truth as could be possible. Maybe 10 years, 15 years back, maybe this was true, when Google was a very small company. However, now there's like 2 lakh people in Google, right? So not everyone is smart. A lot of them are like pretty average. There are people like you and me who just they just like followed the trajectory of life. They did the master, they did the late code. And I wouldn't say they aren't stupid or anything, right? But they aren't like geniuses. It's you don't need to be like an absolute like 1 in million to get into Google anymore. It's like Google is a big company, so is Facebook. Anyone can do. And another one last misconception I want to clarify is people think that like if you didn't start doing this coding when you're like 8-year-old or 10-year-old, life is doomed, right? So I want to give you my own story here. I didn't do coding till I was like 20 years old, right? I didn't even write any line of programming. Forget Like, forget lead code. Like, I didn't even know what like a class is. And I didn't even graduate in computer science from IIT Delhi. I graduated in mathematics, which is kind of similar to computer science, but I didn't even know when I joined college that I'm trying to get for a computer science job. I was just doing my courses, and some of those courses in my second, third year started being like more geared toward computer science. And I started coding when I was 2022. I by no means whatsoever I was a great coder when I got my first job. I was just a good enough coder that I could clear the interviews. And the other thing is, like, a lot of people also say that, oh, just because you can clear the interviews, you won't be able to do the job. The job is very hard. Look, I don't want to promote that like anyone can do it and everyone. That said, when I got my first job, when I started at Microsoft, my first job there was to write in C++. I had never written a line of C++ in my life. I didn't even know what a pointer is, right? And I told this to my boss the first day that I don't even know what a pointer is, right? And they laughed, but same time, just learn. You can learn on the job so much quicker than any of these books will teach you. So it's not worth like thinking too much that, oh, I don't even know, I haven't worked in a big scale, how will I adjust? Most of the people who come here, they haven't done anything. Like, they aren't like some big CEOs joining. Majority are not from IIT. Majority are just people like, your neighbor, तुम्हारा पड़ोसी जैसे ही हैं हम सब, right? हम भी दारू ही पीते हैं वेले टाइम पे. So we are just like same people like you, and there is nothing very like super special about us. And I joined the job without knowing a line of C++. In 1 to 2 years, I was getting like good promotions very quickly. It didn't even matter. It didn't matter that I didn't know. So I have learned much more on the job than any of those books could have taught me. So first, don't think that like if you're not from a great place, great college, or even if you're like not in a great company right now, that things won't happen for you. And secondly, like if you didn't start early, it's not too late. It's not too late. I'm not saying that like everyone should go and learn coding right now, but if you are seeing this as a future, don't think that just because you're 20, 21 and you haven't started, it's the end of the world. I know so many people who did like majors in civil engineering, right? Has nothing to do. And then today they're still doing coding jobs and earning great money, right? Because it's not too late. Like, it's a misconception. And another thing is like, if you don't end up in big tech, it's not the end of the world. Especially in today's world, in places like India, keep your eyes open. There's a huge economy growing, which is not the big tech. These startups are paying more than what you will get in big tech. I have friends who joined early in Flipkart, an urban company. They make more money than I make in US sitting in India. Right? So therefore definitely it's not accurate to think that like if you don't join Google, Facebook, or Microsoft, it's not good. There's a lot of opportunities. Just join whatever you can. Keep grabbing the best opportunity in front of you. Of course, stay active on LinkedIn and whatnot. Try to network, but try to get the local optimum. Don't think in terms of like, don't compare with like people who are very successful or whatever. Try to see what is the best you can do at a given time for yourself, and try to make the best of it. Try to keep expanding your network. Try to, like, whatever the system is, if it's lead code, if it's system design, try to make sure that once you do get the networks, you can at least clear the interviews. And again, clearing the interviews does not take a rocket scientist at all. Like, so many people who are very, very average, and I would call myself average at this point, right? Like, almost anyone who can do a little bit of coding can clear those lead code interviews with sufficient effort. But if you don't get into big tech, don't think that this is the end of the world. There's a lot of ways you can branch out your career. Engineering is not the only thing. You can do an MBA. You can even start up today. You can even start up. Like, the possibilities are endless. And I won't pretend that like, that like someone in a slum can do it and everyone has it equal. Some people have better opportunities, and I want to recognize that. But for a lot of people who are like, doing a job and all, you don't need huge sums of money to start up. Often what you need to do startup is just like think of a problem in your life, right? And like think of the IRCTC website, right, which never loads, right? And think like, oh, what if this could be made better, right? And just start doing something in your free time. right? So
Right, sir.
something as simple as that. And just by doing this, you might realize that, like, damn, like I was able to actually like start getting some users, and suddenly I have, so like, look at Samir, right? Like, he is just making YouTube, and now he has like few thousand subscribers, and I'm sure Samir will do great things in his life. And like, I would say, like, if you are confused of what to do in life, just start with anything. Start writing a blog, start running a YouTube channel, start just like seeing a problem which frustrates you, like, oh, you're trying to get some delivery from your Kirana store, but they won't pick your phone call, right? Just make a website for all the Kirana stores in your neighborhood, and just like, scaling things takes a lot of money, but you don't have to do everything at multi-million dollar, right? You can even be successful at 10 lakh rupees, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely
So
right.
start small. Don't think that if you aren't getting to like don't compare to the person on Shark Tank who just walked with like a 2 crore deal.
Ah,
Look at yourself, look at how you can improve your life, and if you keep comparing to the best person, you'll always be disappointed and angry.
yeah,
So
right.
just see, and again, don't fall for all these like people in internet claiming that, like, oh, I started doing when I was 5 years old, and trying to give the impression that it's only for the smartest people. That's farthest from the truth. A lot of average people are doing, a lot of people who didn't go to great colleges. And I would say definitely going to IIT gave me a huge advantage in being noticed. But 10 years down the line, a lot of people who are not from IIT are doing as good as me. And I say a lot of them today are smarter than me. I would happily I have reported to a few Indian managers. None of them were from IITs. And I would happily report to anyone not from IIT. There's nothing like, with time, these things don't matter at all. So that's my final words. Like, yeah, don't get disheartened by listening to some people who just try to pretend that they're the smartest.
Wow, very nice, sir. And I hope so, guys, you will get very useful information from this podcast. If you get, then kindly do and subscribe. And thank you so much, sir, for your timing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amir.